Their hope is more on a very good yield potential than on making advanced sales and selling a little bit more in advance.
Once again, Matthew Cruz here, filling in for Marlon Bowling, who's out this week on vacation. So I have with me today Felipe Coletto. Am I saying that right, Felipe?
Yes.
And Felipe is Brazilian, but I think maybe he was a smart one. He got out of there, and he's living in Spain right now, right? You're in Madrid?
Yes, I'm living in Madrid nowadays. Yes.
Okay, well, good for you. I was just thinking how I need a vacation, and Madrid seemed like a good place to go. So you're living my dream. Yeah.
I do recommend your visit.
Okay. All right. I've been to southern part of Spain, but not specifically Madrid. So I'll have to make it there someday. But so Felipe, just to give people a little bit of background, Felipe and I met just a few months ago. You actually came to my farm in Iowa on a crop tour. You were with some I guess fund managers and commodity managers, and they were taking a crop tour, and so you got to see our cornfield. And but you didn't get it. You came to the worst year possible because we were right in the middle of the flooding, and so you should have come last year to see what good corn looks like. So maybe give everyone a kind of a brief background on yourself and what you do and all that good stuff.
First of all, thank you, Matthew, for the invitation. Always a pleasure to talk with you. My name is, I'm Felipe. I'm an agronomist. I studied in Brazil agriculture. And once I graduated, I started working at Glencore at the time. Then it became Viterra. Soon enough, it will be Bunge. And I worked there initially as a research assistant, and gradually I moved to the trading of soybeans and corn. Yeah, and this all in Brazil while I was there in São Paulo, and I stayed there for 9 years. And last year I moved to ETG, that is a South African company, to be the responsible for South American beans for them, basically. So Brazil and Argentina, and be responsible for all their trading. And that leads me here to Spain all days.
So you're all over the place. So you're Brazilian working for a South African grain trading company, but lives in Spain.
Yes.
All right. I'm keeping up with you. So what's your role for them specifically? Are you're buying grain, or are you just doing analysis, or what are you doing for them?
Yeah, I'm the trader responsible for soybeans and soybean oil major. Yes, this is my two main roles. Yeah.
When I reached out to Felipe to ask him about coming on our show, your first response was, "I'll do it, but I hope you're prepared for bad news," or something like that. I hope you're prepared for reality. So tell our viewers what you meant by that.
Well, what I meant by that is that I honestly had to make a big effort to remember the last time that I felt like the conditions all over the country so positive. I mean, we had good years. Yes, 2023, we had a very, very good yield average, but we had the South suffering a little bit. The same can be applicable with other years that, the North was producing huge yields, but the South suffering. And this year was more or less the opposite. But now for the forecast for 2025 so far has been amazing. And one thing that when I met you, Matthew, in July, August, no one was expecting that the acreage in Brazil would be above 1%. And nowadays, what we are seeing is probably we're going to get another 2 to 2.5% acreage improvement out of Brazil.
You believe that?
Even Conab is already stating 47.3. We can bet that it's going to be around the last number by 47.5. And that's 1.5 million hectares. from the numbers of 2024.
We're going to be debating that for a little while here, is how much acreage Brazil expanded, because my initial thought, and I think you maybe thought the same thing, was, well, they're not going to expand that much because the profit margins are terrible,
Yeah,
and let's be honest, a lot of people are going to lose money there. So why are they going to expand heavily again? And so I was thinking 1% or less, and Conab's at 3%. And so now you're coming around and you're saying, okay, yeah, it looks like it's going to be closer to that 3%.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the 3% from Conab is because they missed that area this 2024 year. That's why that there's this slightly difference between our numbers. But the point is, the farmer, especially on the marginal areas of the country. So if you look to Mapito and Mato Grosso do Sul, for instance, a little bit in Goiás, but less. Those three major regions, states, we saw a huge growing area, basically, because they use it to have a lot of pasture, but not well used the pasture. I mean, very degraded lands. And I mean, between having that type of investment and just going for the beans, uh, even if it's a bad margin compared to the last 4 or 5 years, it is still a very good margin. I mean, 5-10% for them, it's way better than what they were getting. That was nothing. So you see still this type of movement happening in certain regions, and that's what makes more difficult and challenging for you to stop from one year to the other, the growing area. And one second point is the devaluation of real played an important role, because from I would say May, June forward, real started losing a lot of ground to the dollar. The farmer in Brazil prices everything in reais, or majority in reais, and the price for them now, when you look and talk in October, November, it is the best price of the year, and I mean they are seeing a decent margin if they had everything today, right?
Seeing a local recovery in their basis, mostly because of the exchange rate, not because of what's happening in the Chicago. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, the Chicago for sure. I mean, we saw a correction. I mean, I could tell you that I started the season, buying at the unders in the basis for Brazil, and once Chicago starts falling, basically the premium went up. And I mean, if you talk today, I mean, it corrected 121. No, not at all. Chicago and the prices in dollar dropped way more than anything else. But as they are looking to that in reais per bag, when you talk about instead of having at the beginning of the year 510, 515, now we're talking about 575. I mean, they gained like 10% in reais price, right? At the beginning, I do remember that, I mean, in March, I could be able, I mean, if I was an originator or Bonge Cargill, they were buying and paying to the farmer somewhere at the port of Santos at 110 reais per bag at the port. And today, yeah. And today I would say, I mean, this price is at least 150, So it went 40 reais.
I was just gonna say, I haven't looked at it lately, but it was probably 30% off its low for the year, and what you just told me, it's more like 40% off its
Yeah.
low. And so it's
Oh,
it's maybe not great, but it's way better than what it was 6 to 9 months ago.
exactly. And when you think about the farmer, I mean, in May, June, thinking what he's going to do with his land, and he's seeing the prices improving. The farmer in Brazil is very optimistic, always with prices. So he just basically went to, okay, why not? And gradually it started to, instead of not open that area that I had left over here close to me, I mean, I can open that. I mean, I think it's going to be positive. And from June to today, I mean, he probably feeling that he's right on his final decision.
So summing all this up, it basically it adds up to bad news for global. It's probably good news for you, because if prices drop, maybe you can buy them cheaper. But It's bad news for the farmers. That
Good for the Chinese. I would say it's good for Chinese most of all because I mean, if there is one thing that I've been looking at recently is what could happen and how Chinese are. Because I mean, the last time Trump was in power, I mean, Brazil type of crop was one number, and today we are talking about 35, 40 million tons more than in 2018. And that changed completely the view of how you balance the trading around. And for them, I'm pretty sure those guys are hoping for a big number for Brazil because they could rely in Brazil without getting too worried or paying too much price or needing to decrease their needs and the demand. But yeah, I mean, just in area that we are talking here, we are talking about an addition of 3, 4 million tons, right? On the total number that everybody was using. Everybody started the crop being like, let's be conservative at 165. So now everybody's on the USDA number. And the issue is that is using a very conservative number. The point is the way things are looking to.
they're conservative.
Oh yeah. I'm using a conservative number for all the south of Brazil, and a little bit for Mapito. I mean, if I tell you my overall number is out of this, my current. I mean, what I'm viewing myself is close to 170, so similar to USDA, and I'm dropping Rio Grande by 25% already. So if everything goes just normal there and the rest of the country goes well, I mean, we have the potential easily to go to, I don't know, 175.
There were no issues. We could go to 175.
Yes, I would say like the we could go if everything's perfect everywhere, which as you saw in the US never happens. You might have like a January or February a little bit drier or too much rain, you lose here and there. But I mean, yeah, I would say that the average, the range for Brazil, it's total maximum 180 if everything's super well, and a very regular number or more realistic is we go into 174.
I talked to someone yesterday, and they said, you're right. It's raining well, but it's still early, and there's a lot of growing season left. And so,
Yeah.
on the one hand, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, right? I mean, we've seen it happen before where it starts out well, and then I mean, there's the veranicos, the dry spells in December, January, February. So I'm using my Portuguese here, so to try and impress you.
I would say yes, you have a very good point because I mean, this is, the current expectation. What is waiting, what is, making everything a little bit more heavy is the fact that you talk with climatologists, meteorologists about what to expect for December, and everybody's like, no issues for Brazil. They should rain normal. No place should have like a draw in the middle of the season. Absolutely normal type of growing season for December. And I mean, this would already guarantee for the states that planted earlier a very, very good yield, way better than last year. For example, Paraná, Mato Grosso do Sul that planted earlier, Mato Grosso as well. I mean, you are starting gradually to be more confident on the type of crop you are having. The issue is you need to wait for sure until February for the south, for Rio Grande do Sul, and for Mapito. That's going to be only in February. So there is still a game to move. But yeah, definitely. I mean, when I look to my forecast for the next 30 days, I mean, it's extremely positive.
Good precipitation in South America in the next 30 days, it looks like.
And even Argentina, that everybody's worried so far, has been quite positive. Raining well and not having a strong La Nina there, it adds that instead of going to 40 million tons, we might end up being, because I mean they are increasing the area as well, changing from corn to beans, a little bit of acreage. And a part of that, I mean, if you don't have something very extraordinary in terms of lack of rain, they could be at 46 to 48. And with the amount that Brazil is supplying, you're just adding.
I talked to a consultant in Argentina earlier today, actually, and she described the conditions there as perfect for the planting season, and that they're going to reduce the corn area by 20%, which means it's probably going to increase the soybean area close to 20%. Now, maybe they plant some wheat or sunflowers or something
Yeah,
a little bit, but most of that is going to be replaced by soybeans in Argentina.
100%.
I know
Yes.
Argentina is obviously isn't as great of influence in the market as Brazil, the U.S. in terms of production, but they've had such huge swings in production where they have these droughts that go from 25 million metric tons, and then they
Exactly. They went from
have
40 to 25.
yeah, and they have these huge swings, and so that you're talking half a you know billion or 1 billion bushels, from one
Mhm.
bad year to one good year. Then it adds up, when you look at it that way. But um, so
Yeah.
what's that mean then? The bottom line, assuming we have 170 million metric ton crop in Brazil and 50 million metric ton in Argentina. I mean, where do you see prices going for grain?
No, I mean, Matthew, I don't see much hope in terms of a flat price, to be honest. For beans,
Maintaining, you think it'll go lower?
I think we'll go lower. Yes. Just because, I mean, we are not seeing, we see some improvements on the, on the crushing side. Yes, okay, that's going to absorb something, blah, blah. But in terms of destination, uh, the main important one that would help to sustain the prices is China. And unless China increases their demand, which today is not on their cards, I mean, you talk to everybody in China and they're like, okay, we are going from 114 to 104, something like that. It's 10 million tons less in a year that we are increasing 10 million tons only in Brazil, right? Plus the US that had a very good crop. I mean, that's the issue because you would need people to go and buy way more than what they're doing today to have at least the price is stabilizing, right? Yeah, with 170 million tons, basically Brazil takes most of the business out of the US. I mean, Feb onwards, and the worst part is not Feb onwards until July, August. No, it has enough stocks to go well above 5 million tons of exports until November, December. And and I mean, you're gonna be adding, carry out of the U.S. and that's not gonna help Chicago.
I think we could. I mean, we closed below $10 today in the front month and soybeans. Do you think we could get down to $9 a bushel or below?
I think we could go to low 90. Yes, 920 is more or less where I'm expecting the prices more or less to settle down. So you have a downside of another 50 to 100 cents. Yeah.
Kind of touched on this a little bit. What's the mentality of the Brazilian farmer right now? Are they happy, or they're just winging it, like hoping that prices rebound? I mean, are they trying to forward sell?
Well, Brazil, the farmer, at least what I'm feeling is, first of all, they are all, hoping for a good season in terms. I mean, farmer mentality, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, tends to be more on I want to produce as much as I can instead of I want to sell as best as I can. So what they are doing today is I want to have a very good season. I want to produce my 4 tons per hectare or even more as much as I can. And that would guarantee me a decent revenue for the next season. That's what I hear from them. Their hope is more on a very good yield potential than on making advanced sales and selling a little bit more in advance. The farmer sold what 26 to 28% more or less out of Brazil. It is in line more or less with last year. But if you consider the volume that they need to sell still, it is a lot of volume, right? And if they have in the end a big yield on their farms, I mean, it's, just keeps adding up. And that's not going to help their prices when we talk and if we have this discussion again in March or April next year, because things tend to be a little bit ugly for them. And the issue is for the Brazilian farmer today and what they normally look as my price today on 19th of November is, I don't know, 140 reais per bag. And you want to pay me for next year with all the risks I have ahead of me, only 125? I mean, I don't want to sell with this spread, it's too big. I wanted something closer. And then, I mean, we are not seeing much of an engagement yet. Maybe if the FX helps, I mean, if something happens with the FX could help as well. But my feeling is that the Brazilian farmer, the sentiment today is more focused on let's have a very good planting, first of all. And if I'm harvesting super well and super good yields, then later I deal with the price I'm going to be able to sell. And the feeling is they're going to sell what they need in the moment of harvest and put the rest on the beans. Especially if, I mean, that's going to happen in March. By March, we should know if there is, the temperature is getting more warmer between US and China, and this will have an impact as well on how farmers in Brazil will react, right? So the farmer is also counting on that. At least, yeah, in Brazil for sure.
Closing their eyes and just focused on planting and growing the crop right now, and the market is out of their control a little bit. So I suppose the farmers here maybe they tend to look at both, but they probably, I'm sure, the same thing. They're focused more on the productivity and growing the crop during the growing season, and then in the winter after the crop is out, then they kind of maybe shift more to the market and figure out the best way to market that a lot of times. But yeah. What questions do you have for me? If maybe you don't have any questions about U.S. agriculture or what's going on here.
No, I have a good one. What do you expect from farmer going forward? I mean, I know that on beans and corn, some of it is already sold. I don't know the percent. I don't know your percentage or how much have you sold so far of beans and corn. But what would you do or how would you react in face of the current scenario we have, right? I mean, we have a $10 per bushel on beans. We have 4.30 for corn. Do I sell the beans and keep the corn? Do I hold both and wait longer? What is your how it works for you? I mean, primarily.
We are mostly sold at Comstock. We I want to say we're 80% sold in our old crop or 24 soybeans, and I probably would be okay with being 100% sold after what we're seeing going on in Brazil and like conversations like this. I don't have off the top of my head. I think we're at least 50% sold, maybe a little more on the corn. I'm a little bit more optimistic on the corn because our exports have been very strong. As we kind of saw in the last USDA report, they overestimated the yield a little bit. But with everything going on and with potential Trump coming in and potential tariffs and all that, it doesn't, I'm not a raging bull or anything by any means. But I also, it's a little bit based off of, it's somewhat regional this year too, where, if you're in our area, we had flooding as you saw. Mm-hmm. And so our basis is, we expected our basis to be very strong, stronger than normal, and it already is. Now, obviously, that's not everywhere. If you're in Illinois, your basis is probably horrible, but you also yielded 270 bushels, and so it offsets that a little bit. And so, I don't, if I'm in Illinois, I'm probably be more aggressive at making sales, but considering where I'm at, knowing how, the poor our yields were due to the flooding in our area, I still think there's chances for a stronger basis going into the winter. And so that's kind of where we're at. But so we're holding, I think, close to half of the corn yet, and we're mostly sold on the soybeans. We've been selling soybean calls actually, just to kind of capture the premium, and because we think that the risk is to the downside quite a bit here as well. And so yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think as a general statement, farmers look to sell the beans first and hold on to the corn, because the seems like the beans are a little bit more expensive to store sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of how I would say the scenario here is in the U.S.
Would you change much your ideas in terms of area for beans and corn for next year? You think about it, or just half a half again?
If we see soybean prices drop to the low nines, like you suggest, I don't know who's going to want to plant soybeans because they aren't going to be profitable. And so that's the only savior for beans next year, is that they're going to probably reduce the planted area because the price will be so bad, which they'll plant more corn, then that could weigh on corn prices. And so maybe will they reduce the soybean area enough to then eventually pick back up the soybean prices? I don't know. You're talking stuff 9 to 12 months from now. But that's probably what you're going to happen. And I don't know if you'll see 1 to 2 million acres shift from soybeans to corn, maybe. But it's, it's already, $10 cash based off of our cost of production is really, you don't want to go any lower than that, or you're probably going to lose money, kind of where we're at. And really you need to probably be even higher than that. You still got to have a good yield. You go to $9 and you're definitely losing money. At least, speaking for myself, I know it's different everywhere. But and so the not that the corn returns are great, but they're still a little bit better than the beans. And so that's probably, I like to stick to somewhat of a rotation. Probably do like a 2/3 corn, 1/3 soybeans.
And what I was wondering, because definitely, we go into levels where there's just too much soybeans everywhere, so you need to cut area and production somewhere, right? And $9, you're right. It's low.
It's frustrating that it's the U.S. soybean production in terms of land area is pretty much flat, and it's been flat the last 10 years. And typically it's in Brazil, it goes up every year. It's just a matter of how much, and so was it 2 years ago we saw a 7% increase, which is too much. They've overproduced, overexpanded, and I don't think they've quite got the message yet that we need to slow this puppy down. And maybe there's a lag where it slowed down this year, but not as much as we thought. And so maybe what that means is there has to be more pain to happen for them to want to slow it down some more, and maybe that's coming. So that's really what it comes down to.
I would say yes. Yeah, we need 2 bad years out of Brazil to see that going to zero and perhaps decreasing a little bit. But only 1 year is not enough. We saw that in 2016, and still we got like a 0.5%, but then everything improved. And as you said, very quickly they could expand the area by that absurd 7%. That's crazy.
Well, I've kept you long enough. Is there anything else you want to share with me or the audience?
There is always this tricky politics part that, we don't know what's going to be, but certainly could change a bit our discussions and how these prices will react. But other than that, I think, despite that, the whole scenario and the fundamentals behind that, it remains of too much beans and if we don't have a decent demand growing elsewhere, China and pretty much everywhere, yeah, we're going to too much supply, and everybody will end up suffering on the beans for sure.
Thank you, Felipe, and appreciate it. And, we'll stay in touch.
Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.